This is AP Environmental Science, Chapter 6, The Human Population and Its Impact. This lecture will cover Section 4, How Can We Slow Human Population Growth? For this section, there is one key concept. We can slow human population growth by reducing poverty, elevating the status of women, and encouraging family planning. The first step is to promote economic development. Scientific studies and experience have shown that the three most effective ways to slow or stop population growth are to reduce poverty, primarily through economic development and universal primary education, to elevate the status of women, and to encourage family planning and reproductive health care. Let's begin by looking at the role of economic development. In the world's most desperately poor countries, couples tend to have more children for reasons listed previously. Thus, in many less developed countries, total fertility and population growth rates tend to be high, and large numbers of poor people are increasingly becoming crowded into unsanitary and difficult living conditions in slums and shanty towns. Demographers examining the birth and death rates of Western European countries that became industrialized during the 19th century have developed a hypothesis of population change known as the demographic transition. As countries become industrialized and economically developed, their populations tend to grow more slowly. According to this hypothesis, this transition takes place in 4 stages. Stage 1, pre-industrial. Population grows very slowly because of a high birth rate and a high death rate. Stage 2, transitional. Population grows rapidly because birth rates are high and death rates drop because of improved food production and health. Stage 3, industrial. Population growth slows as both birth and death rates drop because of improved food production, health, and education. Stage 4, post-industrial. Population growth levels off and then declines as birth rates equal and then fall below death rates. Some analysts believe that most of the world's less developed countries will make a demographic transition over the next few decades, mostly because newer technologies will help them to develop economically and to raise their per capita incomes. Other analysts fear that the rapid population growth, extreme poverty, and increasing environmental degradation and resource depletion in some low-income, less developed countries could leave these countries stuck in stage 2 of the demographic transition. Another factor that could hinder the demographic transition in some less developed countries is that since 1985, economic assistance from more developed countries has generally dropped. The resulting shortage of funds, coupled with the poor economies in some countries, could leave large numbers of people trapped in poverty, which could in turn keep population growth rates high in such countries. Many experts argue that more developed countries should help less developed nations to make the demographic transition by aiding them in their economic development. They contend that such an effort could help to stabilize the global population, thereby making more sustainable worlds. Empowering women can help to slow population growth. A number of studies show that women tend to have fewer children if they are educated, have the ability to control their own fertility, earn an income of their own, and live in societies that do not suppress their rights. Although women make up roughly half of the world's population in most societies, they have fewer rights and educational economic opportunities than men have. Women do almost all of the world's domestic work and childcare for little to no pay and provide more unpaid health care with their families than do all of the world's organized healthcare services combined. In rural areas of Africa, Latin America, and Asia, women do 60 to 80% of the work associated with growing food, gathering, and hauling wood. Animal dung used for fuel, and hauling water. As one Brazilian woman observed, "Poor women, the only holiday is when you're asleep." While women account for 66% of all hours worked, they receive only 10% of the world's income and own just 2% of the world's land. They also make up 70% of the world's poor and 66% of its 800 million illiterate adults. Because sons are more valued than daughters in many societies, girls are often kept at home to work instead of being sent to school. Globally, the number of school-aged girls who do not attend elementary school is more than 900 million, almost 3 times the entire U.S. population. Poor women who cannot read often have an average of 5 to 7 children compared to 2 or fewer children in societies where almost all women can read. However, an increasing number of women in less developed countries are taking charge of their lives and reproductive behavior. As it expands, such bottom-up change driven by individual women will play an important role in stabilizing populations, reducing poverty and environmental degradation, and allowing more access to the basic human rights. Family planning can provide several benefits. Family planning provides educational and clinical services that help couples choose how many children to have and when to have them. Such programs vary from culture to culture, but most of them provide information on birth spacing, birth control, and health care for pregnant women and infants. Family planning has been a major factor in reducing the number of births throughout most of the world. It's also reduced the number of abortions performed each year and has decreased the numbers of mothers and fetuses dying during pregnancy, according to studies by the UN Population Division and other population agencies. Studies indicate that a responsible family planning method for a drop of at least 55% in total fertility rates in less developed countries from 6 in 1960 to 2.6 in 2012. For example, family planning coupled with economic development played a major role in the sharp drop in the TFR in Bangladesh from around 6.8 to 2.3 by 2012. Between 1971 and 2012, Thailand also used family planning to cut its annual population growth rate from 3.2% to 0.5% and to reduce its TFR from 6.4 to 1.6. According to the UN, had there not been a sharp drop in TFRs since the 1970s, with all else being equal, the world's population today would be about 8.5 billion instead of 7 billion. Family planning also has financial benefits. Studies have shown that each dollar spent on family planning in countries such as Thailand, Egypt, and Bangladesh saves $10 to $16 in health, education, and social services for costs for preventing unwanted births. Despite these successes, certain problems have hindered progress in some countries. There are 2 major problems. First, according to the UN Population Fund, about 42% of all pregnancies in less developed countries are unplanned, and about 26% end with abortion. So ensuring access to voluntary contraception would play a key role in stabilizing the populations and reducing the number of abortions in such countries. Second, an estimated 215 million couples in less developed countries want to limit their number of children and determine their spacing, but they lack access to family planning services. According to the UN, providing such services where they are needed would cost about $6.7 billion a year, about what Americans together spend on Halloween each year. According to the UN Population Fund and the Allen Guttmacher Institute, meeting women's successes and current unmet needs for family planning and contraception could prevent about 53 million unwanted pregnancies, 24 million induced abortions, 1.6 million infant deaths, and 142,000 pregnancy-related deaths of women per year. This could reduce the projected global population size by more than 1 billion people at an average cost of $20 per couple a year. The Guttmacher Institute estimates that the United States each year, domestic family planning programs prevent 973,000 unintended pregnancies, of which an estimated 406,000 would end in abortion. Some analysts call for expanding family planning programs to educate men about the importance of having fewer children and taking more responsibility for raising them. Proponents also call for greatly increased research in order to develop more effective birth control methods for men. The experiences of countries such as Japan, Thailand, Bangladesh, South Korea, Taiwan, and China show that a country can completely achieve or even come close to replacement level fertility within a decade or two. Thus, the real story of the past 50 years has been the sharp reduction in the rate of population growth, resulting from a combination of the reduction of poverty through the economic development, empowerment of women, and the promotion of family planning. However, the global population is still growing fast enough to add possibly several billion more people during this century. Big ideas. The human population is growing rapidly and may soon bump up against environmental limits. Even if population growth is not a problem, the increasing use of resources per person is expanding the overall human ecological footprint and putting a strain on the Earth's resources. We can slow human population growth by reducing poverty, elevating the status of women, and encouraging family planning. This concludes this section of Chapter 6 for AP Environmental Science. Feel free to review or repeat this lecture or any other APES lectures through the provided platform.